so finally looking inside the vehicle is probably the more interesting part for most people, I guess. I don't know. I've got some bungees here that are connected up to my Rago fabrication panels. I mentioned those earlier during one of the other videos, but those were pretty simple to install. I will say that when I was installing them, I think the little angle bracket at the top there, let's see this one up here, I put the nylock nut and the bolt in the wrong position and ended up realizing I got it in the wrong position, but it had already locked on me. That was one of my first experiences of getting a stuck nylock nut, and that was really frustrating. So I had to cut them apart and use a spare. Other than that, I'd say if you're just slow and methodical and make sure you get everything in the right position before you lock the nylocks, they were pretty simple to install. It's just I started tightening things down and realized I had goofed. But those panels are great. You can see I've got my bungee cords and some of those cable twist tie thingies all hung up there. I got this little extension cord. You can't see it, but it's plugged into the inverter that's built into the 4Runner, and that was great because I could charge batteries while we're driving. And then over here on the other side, the other panel, I've got a fire extinguisher. I decided to mount my camp knife just for easy access, and then a first aid kit kind of strapped up there. Otherwise, they're just really good for kind of strapping things down that you didn't really think about beforehand, keeping them accessible up above all your other gear. So I'm going to disassemble some of this and just get it out of the way, but some bungees to hold everything in when you open the gate, that way it doesn't just come crashing down on you. And let's see, so I got this telescoping ladder off of Amazon. It just keeps going like that. Pretty lightweight. This one was only 30 or 40 bucks, I think. But it was handy for going around and doing the tent. I think once we get sliders, that won't be such an issue. But, oh, and also accessing the cooler up where it was on the rack. That was very helpful for that. Let's see. Yeah. So, okay, so here's our potty bucket. So, well, and before I dive into the details, generally we kept kind of the cooking kitchen stuff on the left. We put our water and gas can and poop can all on the right, and then we had all of our bags of our clothes and other general gear kind of in the middle, and then kind of on top, because the duffel bags, they were easy to throw around once we got going. And then way in the back was kind of like the more contingency type stuff that we hoped we didn't need every day. That was kind of the general arrangement, and it worked out pretty well. I can't complain too much on how the daily packing went. So yeah, when you're out in the woods, for me, I probably would have been fine just leaning up against a tree. But for my wife and for my daughter, who are less comfortable with that kind of thing, we got our Home Depot bucket. I really like that it says "Let's do this." Gives you some motivation for when it's time to squat down and do some business. But then, yeah, there's this toilet lid that just clamps on. It friction fits onto the top here. And then, I don't know where they are, but she found some bags that fit this 5-gallon bucket. They're supposedly biodegradable. And then we bought some special toilet paper from Coleman that's also more readily decomposable. And then we had this little guy inside here. Was a pop-up compartment for privacy, just in case you weren't totally away from the trail. Yeah, so I'll link to a picture on that. Let's see, we had this little Tupperware to hold garbage inside the cabin. So like, let's say you're eating a snack or blow your nose in some tissue or whatever. It was nice to contain it and keep it closed so it wouldn't stink up everything. This is the bag of all the TP stuff for the toilet. Some extra clothes that just found their way stashed in the corner. We had a bunch of extra water bottles just in case, kind of hidden in all the corners. Ended up we didn't need them. This is a camera bag we just found at Best Buy. It's a Manfrotto, but we liked it because it had kind of a big top compartment where you could just fit whatever, maybe even just the camera loose. It has a thing for the tripod on the side, but then on the back of the bag, when you lay it flat, there's a little compartment where you can put all your little gadgets, little components, and there's padding to keep them safe. So this one worked out pretty well, keeping the camera padded and protected, even though we usually have the camera mounted up front. Let's see, we had this little Tupperware thing. I hated this container just because the lid kept popping off and it was a size that didn't really fit anywhere. But I appreciate that my wife got it and was trying to keep things organized. It's just, you learn, you know, as you put things together. But this one, we had some fire starter, electric tape, duct tape. We had a citronella candle. We had some citronella wipes, a knife, some waterproof matches, just some of your camping gear that we might need every night, but it just kind of was crammed in the corner. So we're gonna try to find a better way to stow this stuff next time. We had a couple ponchos, or maybe 3 or 4, just in case it let up and we decided that we wanted to stand out in the rain. We never did, but it was worth it just to have them available. So yeah, and then here's our water jug. Got this at Walmart. It holds 7.5 gallons. This was great. Not only is it just a good solid jug that's a good size and shape, it has this spigot. So basically you unscrew this from the stowed position and then you turn it around and reinstall it on the outside, and then you tighten this down. Once it's all tightened down, you turn it, and then now you've got this little spigot that goes from closed to full open here. And they didn't, well, of course we kept it upright so we didn't have any leakage issues inside. But even that said, when we rotate it, put it on our camp table for the night and used the spigot, it worked great. There was no leaks. So we ended up taking too much water, but again, can you have too much water? Like, I was glad that we had this, and that way if we ever got broken down, we came home with probably half of the tank. But then again, we were at some campsites where we could fill up with water, so I just always feel better with a whole bunch of water just in case we get stuck. Let's see, here's our gas can. We just got a plain one. We didn't get one of those fancy jerry cans that you mount on the outside of the vehicle. This one, we never noticed any vapors. That would have been annoying if it was stinking up the car, but we never had that issue. So maybe in the future, if this one starts to stink up the car, then we'll think about how to mount it outside. But I don't see the reason to mount it outside other than some people think it looks cool. I wore flip-flops most of the time, but it was nice to have some hiking boots just in case it got muddy or if I had to get out and spot the trail somewhere rough. Let's see. So I've got some other footage of the ready light, so I won't go into too much detail, but here's the tripod and then the light itself. I'll just do a real quick intro here. It's got a solar panel on one side. You mount it on the tripod during the day, like let's say in the morning when you're cleaning up camp to let it charge. And then on the back, it's got a main light and then these 4 pods that come off. And each pod can be a handheld flashlight, but it's also got a little hook to hang it. And these are great inside the tent. because you can angle it whichever way you want. And then there's a main light that has 2 brightnesses, and then a little flashlight. So very versatile. It worked very well for us. Early on, I was complaining because down here there's a little USB outlet. I was trying to charge my phone one morning on one of our first mornings, and it just wasn't providing enough amperage. Later I read the manual, I know, RTFM, and you have to turn it on in order for this to give the full output. Otherwise it's just giving a little trickle from whatever solar energy is there. But when you turn it on, it actually also uses the battery, the internal battery to charge. So this thing worked great. It never ran out of light. We left one of the little lights on inside the tent. We left it on all night, and so it was dead in the morning. I don't know how many hours it lasted, but just it was serving as a night light for one night when the baby wasn't sleeping well. Let's see, let me get these bags out of the way. They're just general stuff. We brought a baby carrier in case we did any hiking. We only used it once, so that was definitely something we didn't need, but it didn't take up a lot of room. We had these towels that are microfiber towels. I highly recommend these. I don't care what brand you get. It's just that when you jump in the creek and go for a little dip, these dry you off really well, and then they dry quickly, and they're very, very thin, so they don't take up much room. So microfiber towels is a good idea. For our kitchen box, I'm not going to do everything in here, but you know, we had a little bag that had some utensils. So we had knives and can opener and spatula, lighter, that kind of junk. We had, you know, normal kitchen utensils. I had a cast iron skillet. After a couple of times of cooking up some bacon and sausage, it was seasoned, and it was non-stick, so it was amazing. I got a little egg carrier. These worked pretty well. We had, I think, 1 egg break. And then this is probably one of my favorites. I'm not sure where my wife got this, probably online somewhere, but it's just a little kettle, no big deal. But then, and maybe this is a separate item, I don't know if this all came together, but this is a little coffee filter. I guess it goes like that, and it fits on your mug or your cup, and then you put your grinds in there, and then you pour the hot water, and it makes you a little cup of coffee, and it worked great. This was one of my favorite things. If you don't need coffee, that's cool, but sometimes a little bit of coffee in the morning gets things going. Otherwise, I'd say we probably brought too much stuff. We had a lot of dry goods in here, like we had a bunch of sardines and canned chicken and canned tuna, and we had some ramen packs, and we had whatever those dehydrated things are, I forget the name, just in case, you know, and it's good to have rations just in case you get stuck, but we definitely had way too much food. And that goes for the cooler too. We had probably 10 packages of sausage, we had ribeyes and chicken, and we ended up eating only maybe half of it. So lesson learned, you know, we didn't need near as much food, but then again, it's nice to have a little extra. Let's see, so a propane tank. I went ahead and bought a little 2.5 gallon tank. I didn't want to have the giant one, but I really hate the idea of those disposable ones. I think that's stupid to throw away all that metal and waste all that. I'd rather just have this and fill it up. I did have to get a special adapter hose. Just make sure you get the right one and check it out before you go. The Coleman stove. This thing was great. It's solidly built, and we had it when I camped with my parents a long time ago. I remember that these would blow out easily. That's why it has these little wings. But they must have changed their design, because these ones here, like, they would never blow out. There's something about how they did it where it really does a good job at keeping the flame even in the winds. Now we're getting way in the back. The stuff that we hardly ever used. We did, well, so we did each have some pillows that didn't fit in the tent. It wouldn't close all the way if we kept our pillows up there, so we did move those out every day, but that wasn't a big deal. So way in the back, let's see, we had a hammock. We did set it up one night when we stayed at the same place for 2 nights. It doesn't take a lot of room, so obviously it's not necessary, but it was kind of nice to have. Gave the kids and Joe something to do. So, I mean, you could easily go without it, but then it was kind of fun and it doesn't take up a lot of room. This was our med kit bag. So, you know, thankfully nobody got sick. We did really well with the altitude. We gradually climbed once we got up to 5,000 feet at Canyon City, and then every day was a few thousand more from there. So once we got up to 10,000 feet, it was fine. Nobody got sick, but in case they did, we had Tylenol, Motrin, that kind of stuff. We had bug spray, other sunscreen was one that we should have used, but we didn't because we just thought, hey, we're in the mountains, it's okay. But we ended up getting a little bit of sunburn. Hydrogen peroxide. Of course, medicines for the kids and the babies too, because the dosages are different. So, and then there's some other first aid stuff in here, like bandages and whatnot. But again, thankfully everybody was healthy during the trip, so that wasn't an issue. But definitely have a med kit with you. Let's see, some final other things. So we have regular jumper cables. This is just a bag with stuff for the tent, but behind it, oh yeah, a hammer for hammering the stakes in. But way back in here, here we go. Besides having the regular jumper cables, I went ahead and spent the money on a Noco, what do they call it, Genius or something. And so yeah, Genius Boost. This is a little pricey, but it's a compact lithium ion battery with where it plugs in with some leads to your car battery. And the idea is that instead of, so if you're out in the middle of nowhere and you don't have another car to jump off of, you can have this battery that's got enough amp hours to store it up to at least charge up your battery a little bit, and then hopefully you can get started and get back to civilization. So we didn't have to use it, but it was a little peace of mind just having this available. We didn't use them, but we brought some little walkie-talkies. We heard some other people chattering on one of the channels at one point. Lots of ratchet straps. I brought my fly fishing gear just in case we had an opportunity. And then way in the back, again, lots of bungees to keep things from falling around, but I had my ratchet and wrench set. Thankfully we didn't have to use it, but it's always good to have some tools available. Had a big old slug of rope just in case for whatever. I ended up buying a chopping axe. We did encounter one downed tree, but it was small enough and it was broken so I could just pull it out of the way. But just on the off chance that something was blocking our way and we really wanted to get through it, I had this available, and I didn't bother mounting it outside. I didn't want it getting wet and rusting or whatever, so it fit really well back in that little crease. This was just the old other hose to the camp stove, so we didn't really even need it. And then we brought Speedos for Leo for when he was in the water. Adorable. And then way back in here, an X-Acto knife, some silicone, you know, a set of screwdrivers. Oh, this was a lifesaver. So we bought for the tent, for at least for our tent, it uses 1/2-inch bolts and nuts to attach to the rack. But getting your hand in there to turn the wrench is a real pain, literally. So we found the longest box end ratchet wrench, 1/2 inch size, that we could find. And it's great because you can get in there in the tight space, pop it on there, and then tighten it down. So I highly recommend you get one of these if you're in the same situation as me. Pliers, hex head Allen wrenches, some other, you know, bigger pliers and needle nose pliers, some zip ties, just you know, more duct tape, just a bunch of odds and ends to try to, you know, have whatever tool it is you might need when you're in a crappy situation. And then one other thing I want to show is you can sneak a towel. If you have the sliding tray like I do, you can sneak a towel down underneath there. There's not a whole lot you can fit in there, but that way there's one extra piece of gear there. Let's see, over on the side I put in my Viair air pump, so when we air down we can air back up. If you watched the video in Lake City, we ended up just using their air, which was really nice, but obviously that's not always going to be an option, so it's good to have this. It runs off of the cigarette lighter. And that's about it. Well, so over here on the left compartment, see if you can see over here, I just jammed some rain jackets over there, some paper towels. I had my throwing hatchet, also just another thing in case we needed to chop some small stuff down, but taught my daughter how to throw this and stick it in a tree, so there's a win for Dad. And then in the compartment for the bottle jack, you know, with the tools, I was able to fit another roll of duct tape and 2 quarts of motor oil. I figured they were safe in there in the compartment, and that way if we ever had a leak or whatever, it's always good to have a little extra motor oil. Alright, of course, anytime you're out in the moisture and then you pack things up, it's real important to dry things out. So I think the tent's pretty dry, but we're going to go ahead and open it up. The annex there seems pretty dry, but just to be safe, I opened it up. I had a poncho that's kind of wet. And then this is the bottom of our annex, and it's definitely got some moisture on it. So we're going to let that air dry and then sweep it all and clean it up real nice for next time.